Obviously, you got to make the right pick at quarterback because we're going to be talking dark horse MVP candidates, the MVP discussion, and it's not so obvious. And I think that's fun. I think it's not obvious this year. And there's two guys at the top of the list in Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen currently. But in my opinion, it's not very far behind them. And there's a lot of people right outside the doctor's office waiting to get in for this conversation. Okay. So obviously Josh Allen had his little Heisman MVP moment the other night, beating the Chiefs in Buffalo on fourth down, just knocking a bunch of, pinballing his way into the end zone. Lamar Jackson has been better than he's ever been. And this is a two-time MVP. So he's got to be at the top of the board. Right. But there's been some trouble in paradise with the offense in Baltimore. And it's a group that we thought was the best in the National Football League. And we still think that they can be week in, week out. Don't get me wrong. But they've shown that they can bleed. And as Arnold said in Predator, if it bleeds, we can kill it. Okay?
For sure.
So you know who else has been killing it? Jared Goff. Okay? Jared Goff's amazing. Yep. I want to gauge your immediate reaction to me saying, hey, maybe Jared Goff should be number one. Patrick Mahomes.
I think you're crazy. That's my immediate reaction.
Patrick Mahomes has been on a couple of lists as well this year.
Take him off this list.
I don't know why he's on the list. I don't know why he's on the list. I keep reading these lists, and he's on lists. I understand he's potentially the greatest quarterback to ever play. I know he's playing with one arm tied behind his back, and he's hamstrung with the roster situation there. But they've done some stuff there to help him out. I don't think he's on the list. The two guys that stick out to me, three if you include Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Kyler Murray.
For sure.
Now, Kyler Murray has, and we were having this discussion off camera earlier. He's got a 100 QBR, and I don't know what that means. He has 12 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He's 70% on his completion percentage on the year. Obviously, he's like 8 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns on the ground. And when you take a look at their season, they lost 3 of their first 4, 2 of which were one-possession losses versus the cream of the crop teams. I mean, you're talking about one possession, blowing a lead against Buffalo on the road. And Detroit was a 7-point game, I believe. And this team has been on a tear ever since. Now, this was a group that we thought was a next-year team, but I think that because of the extreme value of this guy, Kyler Murray, not only is this team a contender, and they're going to probably go on a run and win this NFC West, but I think Kyler Murray has played his way into this MVP conversation. And I'll stand by for reactions on all this. And then Saquon Barkley. I think that when we talked earlier, we talked about roster construction, and the Eagles have done a really good job. Obviously, they've drafted the right guys. They've got the right minds in the building as it pertains to a guy like Vic Fangio. Kellen Moore has been doing a really good job utilizing the talent on the field. But Saquon Barkley is spectacular. I know it's a quarterback's list, and we had the conversation for many weeks that Derrick Henry, why isn't he in the MVP conversation? Well, we're going to give him the Offensive Player of the Year. We're going to give Lamar Jackson the MVP. Well, what I've seen from Saquon Barkley, the value add to the Philadelphia Eagles offense, you can't tell me he's not on this list, the dark horse MVP list, and maybe even the real deal MVP list. And the other thing I got for you guys is this. Why aren't linemen on lists? Why isn't there a lineman of the, I understand we have all pros. I understand we have pro bowlers. And I understand that that's all well and good, but half the league laughs at the Pro Bowl, and all pro is essentially as hard to get as a gold jacket nowadays. You know what I mean? Because some guys get it once and then they just stay there in those positions. There needs to be more awards. And I think that when you look around the league, and some of these fabulous offenses, and Mike, you can back me up as it pertains to Detroit, but the impact a guy like, I'm just going to use this as an example, Tristan Wirfs in Tampa Bay for their offense, Penei Sewell in Detroit, Lane Johnson's off button at right tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. There is so much value in the offensive line position, and it is almost criminal that we're not even listed. Not one guy listed on any of these lists that I've been reading is an offensive lineman. It's only running backs and quarterbacks.
Well, here's the thing. I think
if Creed Humphrey
MVP,
doesn't play in a game, if Creed Humphrey doesn't show up in a "This is my Week 12 game" T-shirt and play football every Sunday for the Chiefs, the team would look a lot different. If Lane Johnson's not on the
not
field,
as different as if they didn't.
I'm just telling you have. They got to be on a list. Put them on a list.
It's the age-old argument of, and I agree that offensive player of the year, literally only going to
Ben Johnson's
quarterbacks, running backs,
without
wide receivers is where my gripe is. Like, it's offensive player of the year, but it never has gone to an offensive lineman in the history of the award. So it's like, it's only these guys can be offensive player of the year. I think we should expand our horizons for that. Back when I was working for PFF, we on numerous occasions gave offensive player of the year to offensive linemen because they are at times even more valuable. But the problem is when we talk about MVP is that you have that V in the middle of it, value. And if you objectively try to quantify value of the positions on the football field, quarterback just comes out so far and away on top that's why they get paid what they do. That's why they always win the awards. It's just, if you're giving it to a running back, unfortunately, you're just incorrect. It just is not in the spirit of that value. But if you want to take that out, and I think we should, because to me, it just is a value. It's a quarterback award once you put that word in the title, but it should be a most outstanding player who is playing their position better than anyone else in the NFL. That to me is something that is
Joe Burrow would win
important because value. It's just like, we can just look at the AP first team quarterback award and just give it to them every single year. Sure.
So Joe Burrow is the most outstanding player. Lamar Jackson is the MVP.
Well, I think I think even that one's like debatable, but like most outstanding player, we can give it to Penei Sewell, right? Well, we could have given it to Aaron Donald for all those years. We could have given it to JJ Watt. We could have given it to these guys, Darrelle Revis in 2009. Like we could have given it to other positions that a guy just had a season that we haven't seen before, right? And unfortunately, we're looking at these quarterbacks, and now Lamar can do some things and break some records this year of things we've never seen. Like
J.J. Watt, for example, the year that not only did he have all those sacks, but he was scoring touchdowns.
Too.
That's incredible value, like literally tangible points.
Yes, but there's no quarterback doing a lot of things that we haven't seen before, but we just have to give it to one of them because, well, that's the spirit of the award when you put value in the middle of it, unfortunately.
As I currently look at it right now, right, I think the valuable does make a lot of sense, right? Because that's why I had Jaden Daniels in my top 5 for most of the season, right? He just fell out of it this past week after their loss to the Eagles.
Watch out for Ricky Wall, Jaden.
And watch out for Cliff Kingsbury.
Kingsbury Wall, yeah.
You know what? When November, December hits, it gets a little tough.
That was a thing in Arizona. It really was a thing.
They've got a really nice college offense.
Isn't
that what Cam Taylor-Britt said? They've got a really nice college offense.
But I hear what you're saying, Mike, when you talk about the value and what quarterbacks mean to teams. But if Saquon Barkley's not playing for the Eagles right now, they probably aren't on a 6-game win streak. And I honestly feel like he's the most valuable player on that team. Love Jalen Hurts. Love what he's done. Had some issues with turnovers in the beginning of the year. He's kind of rectified that. Now he did have that one interception versus Dallas the week before in the red zone that you absolutely cannot have. But anytime there's like a lull in their offense, they turn to Saquon Barkley and he gets them out of a rut. Like that to me shows the value of what Saquon Barkley has meant to this team. So, for the longest people have said, running, like you said, Kyle, running back will get maybe, offensive player of the year, right? But we can't put him at MVP because
we can't
the way the NFL has changed.
We can't do that, Lige.
But to me, Saquon's a top 3 candidate right now, right? Just perfect example. Look at that Commanders game. When they blew it out of the water, Saquon literally took over that game in the fourth quarter. Like, either it was catching the football or running the football, and his explosive ability out of the backfield, again, either running it or catching it, always seems to get the Eagles back on track when they need a massive play, right? So, like, to me, he is the most valuable player on that Eagles team if they are going to push the Detroit Lions for a Lombardi or just to win the NFC. It's going to be because of Saquon Barkley. And then when you look at it, I believe he's only like 30 or 40 yards now behind Derrick Henry in regards to rush yards this season, which, again, I don't think anybody thought that anybody was catching Derrick Henry. But you have to add on to the fact that Saquon's a better receiver out of the backfield than Derrick Henry as well, and what he can do catching the ball in the backfield. So I honestly think he's a top 3 candidate right now for MVP. I don't even think he should be a dark horse, Kyle. Like, if they continue to do what they're doing, they have a big game versus the Rams this week. If he goes off again, I think he's solidified as a top 3 candidate for MVP, because when you talk about that V word, Mike, valuable. There's nobody right now currently on the roster for the Philadelphia Eagles, including Jalen Hurts, that's more valuable than Saquon right now.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to denigrate anything he's done. I predicted him to be Offensive Player of the Year before the season. I just thought you just compare what he always ran behind, because he didn't run through much, behind the New York Giants offensive line, and then where he was going to in Philadelphia. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think people are ready for what this could look like, because when he has a head of steam to the second level, there's no one scarier in the NFL. Even I'd put him ahead of Derrick Henry in that regard, because he just is lightning in the open field. But at the quarterback position, I think it really is. It's still Lamar's. I mean, we can be recency bias all we want, but the first
Lamar's number 1 for sure. Yeah,
he was there. I think the biggest dark horse is still Joe Burrow, because if he leads them to the playoffs, he'll have to do it on some crazy stuff. And
correct,
he's capable of that, because he's already done it. He's leading the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And if he truly leads the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns and throws, he only has 4 picks right now. So extrapolate that out, throws, say, 7 picks the entire season. He's on pace for something like over 40 touchdowns, darn near 5,000 yards. If he does that for a full NFL season, and they somehow sneak back into the playoffs, there was no one else in the NFL, I don't think, that was going to, with that offensive line, with the way the defense is playing, that could have done that this season. So I do think that he still has an opportunity. It's obviously going to be a big if. They're way behind the 8 ball right now. But I think he's the closest one, because Lamar really is, like, statistically, if you add in his running, because him and Jared Goff have, like, somewhat similar passing numbers, even though I think Lamar's are still better. But then Jared Goff doesn't.
Yeah, Lamar's number 2 in the NFL in pass yards.
Yeah. So it's like, so Lamar has a pretty clear lead, in my opinion, on everyone else in the MVP conversation. And I think Burrow's the only one who can do it, just because his statistics could be just insane by season's end.
1967,
this is
Johnny Unitas won the MVP award despite not qualifying for the playoffs. In 1973, O.J. Simpson won the MVP award, did not qualify for the playoffs. Joe Burrow, 2024.
I don't think it's ever going to happen anymore. I think the ship is sailed on someone winning.
You got to make the playoffs,
not making the playoffs. But
this is my thing, right?
Playoffs.
I'm a dark horse, but I want to talk about the Joe Burrow thing, because I don't even know if this is the right way to say this, but should he get dinged for the offensive playmakers he has, 1, and 2, that they almost made the playoffs without him at quarterback last year?
I don't think so, because for most of the year, it's just been Jamar Chase, right? Higgins has missed like half the season.
Yeah, but then Higgins just came back last week and had 150.
Yeah, when he comes back, like, it's awesome, right? But it's also, he wasn't there the week before when he went for 450 or whatever against the Ravens. So I think you not just, week 1, you saw the drop off when he didn't really have either guy, when Chase was just getting his feet wet again. You saw him struggle.
But that's what I'm saying. They lost.
He's really only needed 1 to still put up monster numbers this season. So obviously, like, he has some, but it's not like he's working with a great offensive line or a great play caller either. He's kind of still doing a lot of it on his own there.
Yeah. My dark horse guy, and nobody's probably talking about him right now, and he has a big opportunity. Just had one versus Joe Burrow on Monday Night Football. It's Justin Herbert, or Sunday Night Football. I'm sorry.
Because he's been lights out, man. He's so good.
Yeah. So, like, he really struggled that second half, but numbers can be deceiving, right? Quentin Johnson had 2 drops. Josh Palmer had a massive drop, right? 13 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Like, that touchdown interception ratio is ridiculous right now. And the thing is, a lot of times when they get down near the red zone, they're handing the ball off, right? And they actually even used him a couple times in the red zone runs, which, again, that's a facet of his game he hasn't used. And you have to think that Greg Roman has something to do with that. Because I believe he had like 50 yards rushing in the first half for Cincinnati Bengals this past week. He's a guy, when you talk about value, right? When you look at roster construction or lack thereof because of the Chargers being in cap hell this year, like, I guarantee most regular fans couldn't name their top 3 receivers right now for the Chargers. Right now, I can, because I'm a nerd. I just named 2 of them, right? Quentin Johnson, Josh Palmer, and then you got Lad McConkey, who they took in the second round, right? Will Dissly was the funny thing is people always say he was a blocking tight end. People forget when he first started off in Seattle, he was a receiving threat. Like they used him in the receiving game a lot. He became a blocking tight end. And that's why I think not Joe Burrow, but Justin Herbert has a lot of faith in him because he knows that Will Dissly is going to be where he needs to be at the right point in time. And that's why they've had a real connection the last couple of weeks. But nobody saw Will Dissly being a major receiving threat for the Chargers coming into this year. So when you talk about the lack of quote unquote star power at receiver, right? Justin Herbert has done more with less than anybody in the NFL this year. And right now, they're going to be pushing the Chiefs for the AFC West. That's why I say they have a big game versus Lamar and the Ravens this week. They passed their first test because I think me and Mike talked about this last week. The next 4 weeks, we're going to learn about the Chargers just because of who they have coming up on the docket, right? If I'm not mistaken, they just beat the Bengals. They have the Ravens. I think they have the Chiefs as well, and I think they have Tampa in there as well.
They got to go to Arrowhead.
Yeah. So we'll learn a lot about them. And let's not forget, they lost on a one-score game to the Chiefs earlier this year. Really close game. And that was before they kind of turned the offense over to Herbert, where they literally were just trying to play smash mouth football. So I think Justin Herbert, if he can get through this stretch 3-1 or even 4-0, like, look out. He could be a real dark horse to win the MVP, especially if they win the AFC West.
I love that shout out because week 7 on, third most passing yards in the NFL. So the last 5 games, 1,371 passing yards, 9 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, no picks. PFF passing rate's the highest in the NFL over that span, the most big time throws over that span. And that was when kind of we saw this shift in the offense to actually letting it be a pass first offense at time and not just be this ground and pound. We actually saw it open up. And so if that's the guy we see, if that's the offense we see the rest of the season, I 100% agree. They could not only, I don't know what's going to say they're going to unseat the Chiefs in the AFC West, but they could have, they could have it be a 12-win team, be an 11-win team. And then if he has the numbers to do so, be right there in the mix for, statistically with all the rest of the quarterbacks in the NFL. So I love that call out.